The strap hit Helena's back for the third time that morning, and she bit down so hard on her lip she tasted copper. She had been humming while scrubbing the front steps of the boarding house. Nothing more than a few bars of a tune her mother used to sing when Helena was small, before the fever took her. San Francisco in 1872 was a place of opportunity for some, but for Helena Brennan, it was a place of survival, nothing more. "I told you what happens when you make noise," Mrs. Garrett hissed, her face red and bloated with anger. The older woman stood on the porch above, still holding the leather strap in her meaty fist. "You think anyone wants to hear a servant girl caterwauling while they are trying to sleep? You think you are so special that the rules do not apply to you?" Helena kept her eyes on the wet boards beneath her brush, her dark hair falling forward to hide the tears that threatened. She was 20 years old, had been working at this boarding house for 3 years, and still Mrs. Garrett found reasons to remind her of her place. The singing was just the latest offense. Before that, it had been smiling too much at the boarders. Before that, taking too long to bring up the breakfast trays. "Answer me when I speak to you," Mrs. Garrett demanded. "No, madam," Helena whispered. "I do not think I am special." "Good. Because you are not. You are lucky I took you in at all, an orphan girl with nothing to her name. Now finish those steps and get inside. The breakfast dishes are not going to wash themselves." Mrs. Garrett disappeared back into the house, the door slamming behind her. Helena waited until she heard the heavy footsteps retreat down the hall before she let out a shaking breath. Her back throbbed where the strap had landed. It was not the first time, and she knew it would not be the last. She had learned over the years to wear an extra layer under her dress, something to cushion the blows, but it still hurt. The physical pain was bad, but what hurt worse was the silence Mrs. Garrett demanded of her. Helena loved to sing. It was the one thing that made the endless work bearable, the one connection she still had to her mother and the life before the fever, before the orphanage, before this. When she sang, even just quietly to herself, she felt like she was still someone, still Helena, not just the girl who scrubbed and cleaned and did as she was told. She finished the steps in silence, her jaw clenched tight to keep from making even the smallest sound. The morning fog was burning off, revealing the busy streets of San Francisco below. Even this early, the city was alive with noise, with people shouting and wagons rattling, and somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn bellowing in the harbor. All that noise, and she was not allowed to hum a simple tune. Inside, the boarding house smelled of coffee and bacon and unwashed men. Mrs. Garrett ran a respectable establishment, or so she claimed, but most of her boarders were rough types, miners and dock workers and men passing through on their way to somewhere else. Helena kept her head down around them, did her work, and tried not to draw attention. Some of them looked at her in ways that made her skin crawl, but Mrs. Garrett was always nearby, and for all her cruelty, she did not allow her boarders to bother the help. It was one of the few mercies in Helena's life. She spent the rest of the morning in the kitchen, washing dishes and preparing vegetables for the evening meal. The cook, an older Chinese man named Mr. Chen, worked quietly beside her. He never spoke much, but he was kind in his own way, sometimes slipping her an extra bit of bread or a piece of fruit when Mrs. Garrett was not looking. He had seen the marks on her arms before, the bruises that sometimes showed, and though he never said anything, Helena saw the sadness in his eyes. It was nearly noon when everything changed. Helena was out back, hanging laundry on the line that stretched across the small yard behind the boarding house. The sun was warm on her face, and for a moment she forgot herself. A song rose in her throat, soft at first, then growing stronger. It was an old Irish ballad her mother had loved, about a girl waiting for her love to return from the sea. Helena's voice was clear and sweet, and she let herself get lost in the melody, in the words that spoke of longing and hope. She did not hear Mrs. Garrett come out until it was too late. "You stupid, stupid girl," the woman shrieked, and Helena spun around, her heart dropping into her stomach. Mrs. Garrett was already reaching for the broom that leaned against the wall, and Helena knew what was coming. She tried to run, but the older woman was faster than she looked. The broom handle caught Helena across the shoulders, then again across her arm as she raised it to protect her face. "I will teach you," Mrs. Garrett panted, bringing the broom down again and again. "I will teach you to disobey me. I will teach you to make a spectacle of yourself. I will teach you." Helena stumbled backward, her foot catching on the basket of wet laundry. She fell hard, her head cracking against the edge of the wooden fence. Pain exploded behind her eyes, and for a moment everything went white. When her vision cleared, Mrs. Garrett was standing over her, chest heaving, the broom still clutched in her hands. "Get up," she said. "Get up and get out of my sight. If I see you for the rest of the day, I will finish what I started. Do you understand me?" Helena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She pushed herself up, her head spinning, and stumbled toward the back gate. Behind her, she heard Mrs. Garrett muttering about ungrateful girls and the trouble they caused, but Helena was not listening anymore. She just needed to get away, to find somewhere she could breathe. She made it 3 blocks before she had to stop, leaning against a building as waves of dizziness washed over her. Her head was pounding, and when she touched the back of her skull, her fingers came away sticky with blood. She needed to sit down. She needed water. She needed to think about what she was going to do, because she could not go back to the boarding house, not today, maybe not ever. The streets of San Francisco swirled around her, too bright and too loud. She pushed away from the wall and kept walking, not sure where she was going, just knowing she had to keep moving. Her vision kept going fuzzy at the edges, and twice she nearly walked into people, earning curses and shoves that sent her reeling. She ended up in a small park near the edge of town, a patch of grass and trees that seemed impossibly green after the gray streets. There was a bench, and Helena collapsed onto it, her whole body shaking. She put her head in her hands and tried not to cry. She had nowhere to go. No family, no money, no friends who could help her. Mrs. Garrett had been right about one thing. Helena was lucky to have had a place at the boarding house at all. Without it, she was nothing. She was no one. "Miss, are you all right?" The voice was male, low, and concerned. Helena looked up, squinting against the sun, and saw a man standing a few feet away. He was tall, dressed in worn denim and a brown leather vest, with a wide-brimmed hat shading his face. A cowboy, or what passed for one here in the city. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes that were a startling shade of blue. "I am fine," Helena said automatically, even though she was very clearly not fine. Her voice came out shaky, and she saw his eyes narrow with concern. "You are bleeding," he said, taking a step closer. "Your head." Helena reached up again and felt the sticky warmth. "I fell," she said, which was not entirely a lie. The man studied her for a long moment, and Helena had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her. Then he moved to sit on the other end of the bench, keeping a respectful distance. "My name is Zachary Iverson," he said. "I know this is none of my business, but you look like you could use some help." "I am fine," Helena repeated, but her voice broke on the last word, and suddenly she was crying great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She tried to stop, mortified to be falling apart in front of a stranger, but once the tears started, she could not make them stop. Zachary did not say anything, did not try to touch her or tell her to calm down. He just sat there, solid and patient, until the storm passed. When Helena finally got control of herself, wiping her face with her dirty sleeve, he offered her a clean handkerchief from his pocket. "Thank you," she whispered, taking it. "You want to tell me what happened?" he asked gently. Helena looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. His face was weathered but kind, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. There was something steady about him, something that made her want to trust him even though she knew better than to trust anyone. "I worked at a boarding house," she said slowly. "The owner, she did not like me singing while I worked. She said I was making a spectacle of myself. Today she beat me for it and I hit my head. I cannot go back there." Zachary's jaw tightened and she saw his hands curl into fists on his knees. "She had no right to lay a hand on you," he said, his voice hard. "She had every right," Helena said tiredly. "I work for her. I live under her roof. I owe her everything." "You owe her nothing," Zachary said fiercely. "No one has the right to beat another person, especially not for something as innocent as singing." Helena wanted to believe him, but she had learned a long time ago that the world did not work the way it should. "It does not matter now," she said. "I have nowhere to go, no money, no prospects. By tomorrow I will probably be begging on the street." Zachary was quiet for a moment, and Helena could see him thinking, working through something in his mind. Finally, he said, "I might have a solution." "It is not much, but it is something." Helena looked at him warily. She had heard promises before, from men who claimed they wanted to help but really wanted something else entirely. "What kind of solution?" "I have a ranch," Zachary said. "About a day's ride south of here, near San Jose. It is not a big operation, just me and a few hands, raising cattle and horses. I came to the city to sell some stock and pick up supplies, but I have been thinking for a while now that I need someone to help with the house. Cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. The men try their best, but we are living like bachelors and it shows." Helena stared at him. "You are offering me a job. You do not even know me." "I know you have had a rough day," Zachary said. "I know someone hurt you for doing something that should not be a crime. And I know I could use the help. The pay is not much, but you would have your own room, 3 meals a day, and I promise you, no one on my ranch will ever lay a hand on you, not for singing, not for anything." It was too good to be true. Helena knew it had to be. Men did not just offer jobs and safety to strange women they met in parks. There had to be a catch, something he was not telling her. As if he could read her mind, Zachary said, "I am not asking for anything inappropriate if that is what you are worried about. You would be an employee, nothing more. You would have your privacy and I would have mine. I just need someone who can keep a house and maybe teach my men that you are supposed to wash your plate after you eat, not just leave it on the table until it grows mold." Despite everything, Helena felt a small smile tug at her lips. "They really do that. You have no idea," Zachary said, shaking his head. "Last week, I found a pot of beans that had been sitting on the stove for so long, I think something was starting to grow in it. We are not proud men when it comes to housekeeping." Helena laughed, a real laugh that surprised her, then her smile faded. "Why are you doing this? Why would you help me?" Zachary looked away, his gaze distant. "A few years back I had a sister," he said quietly. "Her name was Mary. She was younger than me, sweet and kind, and she loved to sing. After our parents died, she went to work for a family in Sacramento, taking care of their children. The husband seemed like a decent man, but it turned out he had a temper. One day, Mary did something he did not like, I never found out what, and he beat her so badly she did not wake up for 3 days. By the time I got word and made it up there, she had died." Helena felt her throat tighten. "I am so sorry. I swore that day that if I ever had the chance to help someone in a similar situation, I would," Zachary said, meeting her eyes again. I cannot bring Mary back, but maybe I can keep someone else from ending up like she did. So what do you say? Will you come work for me?" Helena knew she should be more cautious. She should ask more questions, should insist on references, should do 100 things that a smart, sensible woman would do. But she was not feeling smart or sensible. She was feeling desperate and scared and so tired of being afraid. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will come work for you." Zachary smiled, a real, warm smile that lit up his whole face. "Good. That is good. We will leave first thing tomorrow morning if that works for you. I have a room at a hotel near the docks. It is nothing fancy, but it is clean and safe. You can stay there tonight and I will sleep in the stable with my horse. Tomorrow we will head south." "I cannot take your room," Helena protested. "You can and you will," Zachary said firmly. "I have slept in worse places than a stable, believe me. Besides, you need to rest, and you need to get that head looked at. There is a doctor a few blocks from the hotel. We will stop there on the way." Helena wanted to argue, but she was so tired and her head hurt so much, and Zachary was looking at her with such genuine concern that she could not bring herself to refuse. "All right," she said. "Thank you. Truly thank you." "Do not thank me yet," Zachary said, standing and offering her his hand. "Wait until you see the state of the ranch house. You might change your mind." Helena took his hand and let him help her to her feet. His grip was strong and steady, and for the first time in a very long time she felt like maybe, just maybe, things might be all right. The doctor confirmed that Helena had a concussion but said that with rest she would recover. He cleaned and bandaged the wound on her head, tusked disapprovingly at the bruises on her back and shoulders, and gave Zachary strict instructions to make sure she took it easy for the next few days. Zachary listened intently, asking questions and nodding seriously, and Helena felt a flutter of something warm in her chest. When was the last time someone had cared this much about her well-being? The hotel room was small but clean, as Zachary had promised. He showed her where everything was, told her to order food from the restaurant downstairs and put it on his tab, and reminded her to lock the door behind him. "If you need anything, anything at all, tell the clerk at the desk," he said. "He knows where to find me." "I will be fine," Helena assured him. "You have already done so much." Zachary hesitated in the doorway, his hat in his hands. "Get some rest," he said finally. "We have a long ride ahead of us tomorrow." After he left, Helena stood in the middle of the room, hardly believing any of this was real. Just this morning, she had been at the boarding house, scrubbing steps and dodging Mrs. Garrett's wrath. Now she was in a hotel room with a clean bed and a new job waiting for her. It felt like a dream, the kind she would wake up from only to find herself back in that miserable little attic room at the boarding house. But when she touched the bandage on her head, the pain was real enough. And when she looked at herself in the small mirror over the wash basin, she saw a woman who looked exhausted and battered but also, perhaps, just a little bit hopeful. She ate the meal Zachary had insisted she order, turkey and potatoes and fresh bread that tasted like heaven after years of eating scraps and leftovers. Then she lay down on the bed, meaning to rest her eyes for just a moment, and did not wake until the morning sun was streaming through the window. Zachary was waiting for her in the hotel lobby, looking fresh despite having spent the night in a stable. He had 2 horses saddled and ready, along with a pack mule loaded with supplies. "How are you feeling?" he asked when he saw her. "Better," Helena said, and it was true. Her head still ached, but the dizziness was gone and she felt steadier on her feet. "Thank you for the room. I slept better than I have in years." "Good. You are going to need your strength. It is about a day's ride to the ranch, maybe a little less if we make good time. Have you ridden much?" Helena shook her head. "Not since I was a child, My father used to put me on his horse when we went into town, but that was a long time ago. All right, I will put you on Daisy. She is as gentle as they come. Just sit back and let her follow my horse. She knows the way." Daisy turned out to be a sweet-tempered mare with a brown coat and a white blaze on her face. She stood patiently while Zachary helped Helena into the saddle, adjusting the stirrups and showing her how to hold the reins. His hands were gentle, and he explained everything clearly, never making her feel foolish for not knowing. They rode out of San Francisco as the city was waking up, the streets filling with people and noise. Helena found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the horse's gait, and as the buildings gave way to open countryside, she felt something loosen in her chest. She had spent so long in the city, surrounded by walls and rules and people who wanted to control her, that she had forgotten what it felt like to see the horizon stretch out endlessly. Zachary rode beside her, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the area. He had a way of talking that was easy and comfortable, never forcing conversation, but always ready to answer her questions. She learned that he had come to California 5 years ago from Colorado, drawn by the promise of cheap land and new opportunities. He had started with nothing but a good horse and a lot of determination, and slowly built up his ranch into something he could be proud of. "It is not much," he said as they stopped to water the horses at a creek, "but it is mine. Every fence post, every head of cattle, I earned it myself. No one can take that away from me." Helena understood what he meant. She had never owned anything in her life, had always been dependent on others for everything. The idea of having something that was truly hers, a place where she belonged, seemed almost impossible. They ate lunch under the shade of an oak tree, bread and cheese and apples from Zachary's saddlebag. He asked her about her life, and Helena found herself telling him things she had never told anyone. About her childhood in a small town in Oregon, about her parents who had loved her and each other, about the fever that had taken them both within a week of each other, about the orphanage where she had spent her teenage years, and the boarding house where she had ended up after aging out of the system. "I tried to stay quiet," she said, staring at the half-eaten apple in her hands. "I tried so hard to just do my work and not cause trouble. But the singing, I could not help it. It was the only thing that made me feel like I was still alive, still me, and Mrs. Garrett hated it. She said I was trying to draw attention to myself, trying to seduce her boarders. But that was not it at all. I just needed to sing." "You should not have to explain yourself," Zachary said quietly. "There is nothing wrong with singing. In fact, I think the world could use more of it." Helena looked at him, surprised. "You do, of course. My mother used to sing all the time. She said it made the work go faster and kept the loneliness away. I always loved listening to her. Made the house feel like a home, you know." Helena felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears this time. "I would like that," she said. "A place that feels like a home." "Then that is what we will make it," Zachary said. And the way he said it with such simple certainty made Helena believe that maybe it was possible. They reached the ranch just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful in a wild, rugged way. The house was small and weathered, sitting in a clearing surrounded by gently rolling hills. There was a barn, a corral with horses, and in the distance, Helena could see cattle grazing. 3 men were sitting on the porch of the bunkhouse, and they stood when they saw Zachary approaching. "Boys, this is Miss Helena Brennan," Zachary called out as he dismounted. "She is going to be helping out around here, keeping the house in order. I expect you all to treat her with respect." The men nodded, eyeing Helena with curiosity but not hostility. Zachary introduced them one by one. There was Tom, an older man with gray hair and a weathered face, Miguel, a young Mexican man with an easy smile, and Sam, a quiet, serious fellow who looked to be about Helena's age. "Madam," they each said in turn, tipping their hats. Helena nodded back, suddenly shy. She was not used to being treated with such courtesy. Zachary led her to the house, and when he opened the door, Helena understood what he had meant about the state of things. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, and it was a disaster. Dirty dishes were piled everywhere, clothes were draped over furniture, and the floor looked like it had not been swept in months. The smell was not terrible, but it was not pleasant either. "I told you it was bad," Zachary said, looking sheepish. "We have been batching it pretty hard." "It is fine," Helena said, and she meant it. She had cleaned worse. At least this mess came from men who were too busy working to keep house, not from deliberate neglect or cruelty. "I can fix this." "Your room is through here," Zachary said, leading her to a small door off the main room. Inside was a tiny bedroom with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out toward the hills. It was simple, but it was clean, and best of all, it had a door with a lock. "I cleared it out for you this morning before I left," Zachary said. "Changed the sheets and everything. If you need anything else, just let me know." "It is perfect," Helena said, and she meant that too. She set her small bundle of belongings on the bed, everything she owned in the world, and turned to face Zachary. "I will start tomorrow, if that is all right. Get the house in order." "Take your time," Zachary said. "You are still recovering, and Helena, if you want to sing while you work, you go right ahead. Sing as loud as you want. The boys and I would enjoy it." Helena felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. Zachary smiled and tipped his hat. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is soon enough to start." That night, lying in her small bed and listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down around her, Helena felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt safe, and when she drifted off to sleep, she dreamed not of Mrs. Garrett and her strap, but of wide open spaces and a voice singing freely under a sky full of stars. The next morning, Helena woke to the sound of roosters crowing and men's voices outside. The sun was just coming up, painting her little room in soft golden light. She dressed quickly in one of her 2 work dresses and ventured out into the main room. Zachary was already up, standing at the stove and attempting to cook something that looked like eggs but smelled distinctly burnt. He looked up when he heard her, and his face broke into a relieved smile. "Oh, thank God," he said. "I was trying to make breakfast, but I think I am murdering these eggs." Helena laughed and crossed to the stove, gently taking the spatula from his hand. "Let me," she said, and set about salvaging what she could. The eggs were beyond hope, but she found bread that was still good, some bacon in the cold box, and coffee that smelled strong enough to wake the dead. Within 20 minutes, she had a proper breakfast laid out on the table. Zachary insisted that she eat with him, not as a servant but as part of the household. It felt strange at first, sitting across from him like an equal, but he made it easy with his casual conversation and genuine interest in her thoughts. The ranch hands came in one by one, drawn by the smell of real food, and they all ate together, the men thanking Helena profusely for the meal. "Best breakfast I have had in months," Tom declared, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "You could not cook to save your life, Tom," Miguel teased. "Of course it is the best you have had." They all laughed, and Helena found herself smiling. This was so different from the boarding house, where meals were tense affairs with Mrs. Garrett criticizing everything and the boarders eating in hostile silence. Here, there was warmth and camaraderie, the easy affection of men who worked hard together and cared about each other. After breakfast, the men headed out to work, and Helena surveyed the disaster that was the house. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work, starting with the dishes. As she scrubbed, she found herself humming, just a little tune under her breath. She stopped, waiting for the yelling, the blow, but nothing came. The house was quiet except for the sound of water and her own voice. Slowly, carefully, she let the humming grow into actual singing. Her voice filled the small house, bouncing off the walls, and it felt like coming home. She sang the old Irish ballads her mother had loved, sang hymns she remembered from church, sang work songs she had made up herself during the long years at the boarding house. She sang while she washed dishes, while she swept floors, while she scrubbed the table until it gleamed. By midday, the house was transformed. The dishes were clean and put away, the floor was swept, the furniture was dusted, and the place smelled of soap and fresh air from the open windows. Helena was sweaty and tired, but she felt good, better than she had felt in years. This was honest work, and she could sing while she did it. That alone made it worth everything. She was just finishing up when Zachary came back to the house, looking for water. He stopped in the doorway, staring around at the transformed space. "Helena, this is incredible," he said. "I did not think it could look this good." "It is not done yet," Helena said, wiping her forehead with her sleeve. "I still need to tackle the bedrooms, and I want to do laundry tomorrow, and the windows could use a good cleaning. But it is a start. It is more than a start. It is a miracle." Zachary poured himself a glass of water from the pitcher on the table and drank deeply. Then he looked at her, his blue eyes warm. "I heard you singing. You have a beautiful voice." Helena felt her cheeks heat. "Thank you. I hope I was not too loud." "Not at all. In fact, the boys and I were talking about it. They said it made the work go easier hearing you. Tom said it reminded him of his wife back before she passed. He meant that as a compliment." "I am glad," Helena said softly. "I have missed singing so much." "Then sing all you want," Zachary said. "This is your home now, too. You should feel free to be yourself here." Over the following weeks, Helena settled into life on the ranch. She cleaned and cooked and kept the house running smoothly, and for the first time in her life, she felt like her work mattered. The men appreciated everything she did, always thanking her and complimenting her meals. Zachary made sure she had everything she needed, bringing back supplies from town and asking her opinion on household matters. And she sang. She sang while she kneaded bread, while she mended clothes, while she hung laundry in the sun. She sang in the morning and the evening, filling the ranch with music. The men started requesting songs, and she learned new ones just to please them. Miguel taught her Mexican folk songs, and Sam shyly asked if she knew any ballads from his home state of Missouri. But it was Zachary who listened the most intently. Helena would catch him sometimes, standing in the doorway or sitting on the porch, just listening to her sing. His face would be soft, almost peaceful, and when their eyes met, he would smile at her in a way that made her heart flutter. She tried to ignore that flutter. Zachary was her employer, nothing more. He had given her a job and a safe place to live, and she was grateful, but that was all it could ever be. She was a housekeeper, and he was the ranch owner. There was a line between them that should not be crossed. But lines, she was discovering, had a way of blurring. It started with small things. Zachary asking her to ride out with him to check on the cattle, saying he wanted her opinion on a good spot for a garden. The two of them sitting on the porch after dinner, talking about everything and nothing as the sun set. Zachary bringing her little gifts from town, a new hair ribbon, a book he thought she might like, a packet of seeds for flowers. "You do not have to do this," Helena said one evening when he presented her with a new shawl, soft blue wool that felt like a cloud. "I know," Zachary said. "I wanted to." "You work so hard, Helena. You deserve nice things." She could not argue with the sincerity in his eyes, so she just accepted the shawl and tried to ignore the way her hands shook as she wrapped it around her shoulders. The ranch hands noticed. Tom gave her knowing looks, and Miguel teased Zachary gently when Helena was not around. Even Sam, usually so quiet, mentioned one day that he had never seen Zachary so happy. "You are good for him, Miss Helena," Sam said as she served him lunch. "He was lonely before you came." He did not say it, but we all knew. This place is better with you here. Helena did not know what to say to that, so she just smiled and changed the subject. 3 months after Helena arrived at the ranch, trouble came in the form of a man on a black horse. Helena was in the garden, which had grown beautifully under her care, when she heard the sound of hooves. She looked up to see a stranger riding into the yard, a tall man with a hard face and cold eyes. He did not acknowledge her, just dismounted and headed straight for Zachary, who had come out of the barn. Helena could not hear what they were saying, but she could see the tension in Zachary's body, the way his hand hovered near the gun at his hip. The stranger was gesturing aggressively, and his voice, though too low for Helena to make out words, sounded angry. Then the stranger pointed at the house, at the land, and said something that made Zachary's face go dark with fury. Zachary stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, Helena thought they were going to fight. But then Tom came out of the barn, followed by Miguel and Sam, and the stranger seemed to think better of whatever he was planning. He mounted his horse, said something else to Zachary, and rode off, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Helena hurried over to where Zachary stood watching the man leave. "Who was that?" she asked. Zachary's jaw was tight. "His name is Jacob Marston. He owns the big ranch to the north. He has been trying to buy my land for the past 2 years, and he does not like taking no for an answer." "What did he want?" "Same thing as always. To make me an offer I cannot refuse. Only this time he added some threats to sweeten the deal. Said things have a way of going wrong for people who do not cooperate with him." Helena felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," Zachary said firmly. "This is my land, and I am not selling it no matter what Marston says or does. He is all talk anyway." He would not dare try anything with witnesses around. But Helena saw the worry in his eyes, and she felt worry bloom in her own chest. She had finally found a place where she felt safe, where she could be herself. The thought of losing it, of something happening to Zachary, made her feel sick. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in her bed, listening to the sounds of the ranch and thinking about Jacob Marston and his threats. She thought about Zachary, about the way he had stood his ground, refusing to be intimidated. She thought about how much she had come to care for this place, for the men who lived here, for Zachary himself. Somewhere along the way, her gratitude had turned into something deeper. She had tried to deny it, tried to tell herself that she was just grateful for his kindness, but she could not lie to herself anymore. She was falling in love with Zachary Iverson, had maybe been falling for months without realizing it. It was a terrifying realization. She had never been in love before, had never had the luxury of thinking about such things. And even now, even with the feelings growing stronger every day, she did not know what to do about them. Zachary was a good man, better than any she had ever known, but that did not mean he felt the same way about her. He cared for her, she knew that much, but caring was not the same as love. She was still awake, tangled in her thoughts, when she heard a sound outside. It was faint, just the creak of a board, but it was enough to make her go still. She listened, hardly breathing, and heard it again. Someone was on the porch. Helena slipped out of bed and crept to her window, peering out into the darkness. At first she saw nothing. Then a shadow moved near the barn, and she saw the flicker of flame. Someone was trying to light a fire. She did not think. She just grabbed her shawl, threw it over her nightgown, and ran out of her room through the main house and out onto the porch. "Fire!" she screamed. "Fire in the barn!" Lights came on in the bunkhouse, and within seconds, Zachary and the hands were running out, carrying buckets. The fire was still small, just catching on a pile of hay near the barn door, but it was growing fast. The men worked frantically, hauling water from the pump and throwing it on the flames. Helena joined them, pumping water as fast as she could, her arms burning with the effort. It took 30 minutes to get the fire out, and by then, everyone was soaked and covered in soot. The barn was damaged but not destroyed, and more importantly, the horses were safe. Zachary led them out one by one, murmuring soothingly to calm them. When it was over, they all stood in the yard, breathing hard and staring at the charred barn. "That was no accident," Tom said grimly. "Someone set that fire on purpose." "Marston," Zachary said, his voice flat with anger. "He is trying to scare us off." "What do we do?" Miguel asked. "We stay alert," Zachary said. "We take turns keeping watch at night, and we do not give him the satisfaction of seeing us run." The men nodded, but Helena saw the fear in their faces. This was not a game anymore. Marston was willing to burn them out, and if he was willing to do that, what else might he try? Over the next week, tension hung over the ranch like a dark cloud. The men took turns standing watch, and everyone jumped at shadows. Helena tried to keep things normal, cooking meals and maintaining the house, but it was hard to sing when every noise made her heart race. Zachary was different too. He was quieter, more withdrawn, spending long hours riding the property and checking fences. Helena could see the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, the fear that something would happen to his land, to his men, to her. One evening, she found him sitting on the porch alone, staring out at the sunset. She sat down beside him, not saying anything, just being there. After a while, he spoke. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I am sorry I brought you into this. You came here to get away from danger, and I have put you right back in it." "This is not your fault," Helena said firmly. "Marston is the one doing this, not you, and I am not sorry I came here. This is the happiest I have been in my entire life, Zachary. Whatever happens, I do not regret it." He turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. "You really mean that?" "I do," Helena said. And then, because she could not keep it inside anymore, because life was too short and too uncertain, she added, "I care about you, Zachary. I care about this place and these people, but mostly I care about you." Zachary stared at her, and for a moment Helena thought she had made a terrible mistake. Then he reached out and took her hand, his fingers rough and warm around hers. "I care about you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than I should, probably. More than is smart. But I cannot help it, Helena. From the moment I saw you in that park, something in me just knew." "Knew what?" Helena whispered. "That you were going to change my life," Zachary said. "That I was never going to be the same after meeting you." Helena felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were happy tears. She had never expected this, never dared to hope that someone like Zachary could feel this way about someone like her. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. "You do not have to say anything," Zachary said. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Just know that I am going to do everything in my power to keep you safe, to keep all of you safe. Marston is not going to win. I will not let him." 2 days later, Marston came back, but this time he was not alone. He brought 6 men with him, all armed, and they rode into the ranch yard like they owned the place. Zachary met them with Tom, Miguel, and Sam at his back, all of them armed as well. "Last chance, Iverson," Marston called out from his horse. "Sell me this land or you are going to regret it." "I already gave you my answer," Zachary said, his voice steady despite the odds against them. "The answer is no. Now get off my property." Marston's face darkened. "You are making a mistake. A big one. You think you can stand against me. I own half this county. The sheriff is in my pocket. I can make your life hell, and there is nothing you can do about it." "Maybe," Zachary said. "But this is still my land, and you are still trespassing. Leave now, or I will defend my property." For a long moment, the two groups stared at each other, tension crackling in the air like lightning. Helena watched from the window of the house, her heart in her throat. If shooting started, people were going to die. Zachary might die. Then, miraculously, another group of riders appeared on the ridge above the ranch. Helena counted at least a dozen men, all armed, and at their head was a man she recognized from town, the owner of one of the neighboring ranches. He was a big man with a grizzled beard, and his voice carried across the yard. "Having trouble, Iverson?" Zachary looked up, surprise and relief flashing across his face. "Nothing I cannot handle, Morrison." "Looks like it to me," Morrison said, riding down into the yard with his men behind him. "Marston, I heard you have been throwing your weight around trying to force folks off their land." "I did not believe it until now." "This is none of your business, Morrison," Marston snapped. "It is when you are threatening good people," Morrison said. "Iverson here is a decent man, and he has a right to his land. You have no right to try and take it from him. Now, I suggest you and your boys ride out of here before things get ugly." Marston looked around, clearly doing the math. He was outnumbered now, and he knew it. His face twisted with fury, but he yanked his horse's head around. "This is not over," he snarled at Zachary. "Yes, it is," Morrison said calmly. "Because if I hear about you bothering Iverson or anyone else around here again, I am going to make sure the territorial governor hears about it. I have friends in high places too, Marston, and mine actually care about justice. So unless you want to spend the rest of your life explaining yourself to authorities, I suggest you leave these folks alone." Marston glared at all of them but did not say another word. He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. They all watched until they were out of sight. Morrison dismounted and walked over to Zachary, extending his hand. "Sorry I did not get here sooner. Your man Sam rode over to my place and told me what was happening. Figured you could use some backup." Zachary shook his hand, his face showing the strain of the past few minutes. "I cannot thank you enough. You probably saved our lives." "Just being a good neighbor," Morrison said. "Besides, I have been wanting to put Marston in his place for years. He thinks he runs this whole area, but there are still some of us who believe in doing things the right way. You just keep farming your land, Iverson, and if Marston gives you any more trouble, you let me know." After Morrison and his men left, Zachary came into the house, and Helena met him at the door. Without thinking, she threw her arms around him, holding him tight. "I thought something terrible was going to happen," she said against his chest. "I thought I was going to lose you." Zachary held her just as tightly, his face buried in her hair. "I am all right," he murmured. "We are all right. It is over, Helena. Marston is not going to bother us again." Helena pulled back just enough to look up at him. "Promise me something," she said. "Promise me you will never take a risk like that again. Promise me you will always come back to me." "I promise," Zachary said. And then, because the words were not enough, because they had both just faced the possibility of losing each other and it had made everything clear, he leaned down and kissed her. It was a gentle kiss, tentative, as if he was afraid she might pull away. But Helena did not pull away. She kissed him back, pouring all of her fear and relief and love into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Zachary was looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I love you," he said, the words tumbling out like he could not hold them back anymore. "I know it is too soon, I know I should wait, but I love you, Helena. I think I have loved you since that day in the park." "I love you too," Helena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I did not think I could feel this way about anyone, but I do. I love you so much." Zachary kissed her again, and this time it was deeper, more certain. They stood there in the doorway of the little ranch house, holding each other, and Helena knew that she had finally found what she had been looking for her whole life. She had found home. The next few months were the happiest of Helena's life. Marston kept his distance, true to Morrison's warning, and life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. But now, everything was different because Helena and Zachary were together. They did not hide it from the ranch hands, who teased them good-naturedly and claimed they had seen it coming all along. Zachary courted her properly, despite the fact that they lived under the same roof. He brought her wildflowers and took her on rides through the hills. They talked for hours about everything, about their pasts and their dreams for the future. He asked her opinion on ranch matters, valuing her thoughts and ideas. And every night, before they went to their separate rooms, he kissed her good night on the porch, sweet kisses that promised more to come. 6 months after the confrontation with Marston, Zachary asked Helena to marry him. He did it simply, without any grand gestures, just the two of them sitting by the creek where they had stopped on that first ride to the ranch. "I know I do not have much to offer," he said, holding her hand in both of his. "Just a small ranch and a lot of hard work, but I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me, Helena?" "Yes," Helena said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course I will marry you." They were married a month later in a small church in San Jose, with Morrison and his wife standing as witnesses and the ranch hands filling the pews. Helena wore a simple white dress that Zachary had bought for her in San Francisco, and she carried a bouquet of wildflowers. As she walked down the aisle toward Zachary, who was waiting for her with tears in his eyes, she sang softly, a hymn her mother had loved. Her voice filled the church, and everyone smiled. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Zachary kissed her in front of everyone, and the church erupted in applause. Helena had never been so happy in her entire life. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under their joint care, Zachary managing the land and livestock, while Helena kept everything else running smoothly. They added onto the house, building a proper bedroom for themselves and planning for the family they hoped to have. That family came sooner than they expected. Just over a year after their wedding, Helena gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Samuel, after Sam, who had ridden to get Morrison and probably saved all their lives. The baby had Zachary's blue eyes and Helena's dark hair, and Zachary declared him the most perfect child who had ever existed. Helena sang to Samuel, from the moment he was born, lullabies and folk songs, and everything she could remember her own mother singing. Zachary would sit and listen, his face soft with love, and sometimes he would join in with his own rough but earnest voice. 2 years later they had a daughter, and they named her Mary after Zachary's sister. Mary was a spirited child with a loud laugh and a fearless nature, and she kept them all on their toes. Samuel adored his little sister, and the two of them were inseparable. The ranch hands stayed on, becoming part of the family. Tom was there when Samuel took his first steps, and Miguel taught Mary her first words in Spanish. Sam, quiet Sam, surprised everyone by getting married himself to a girl from town, and they built a house on the far side of the ranch property. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick cattle and broken fences, all the challenges that came with ranching. But they faced everything together, Zachary and Helena, and their love only grew stronger with each passing year. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Zachary took Helena back to San Francisco. They visited the park where they had first met, sitting on the same bench where Zachary had offered her a new life. "You ever regret it?" Zachary asked, holding her hand. "Leaving the city, coming to the ranch with me." Helena looked at him, at the man who had saved her in every way that mattered, who had given her not just a home but a life filled with love and purpose. "Not for a single second," she said. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed. You let me sing." "You have a beautiful voice," Zachary said, smiling. "I never get tired of hearing it." "Then I will sing for you forever," Helena promised. And she did. She sang while she worked in the garden and cooked meals for her family. She sang to her children and later to her grandchildren when Samuel and Mary had families of their own. She sang at church socials and community gatherings, her voice becoming well known throughout the county. People said that the Iverson Ranch was a place of joy, that you could hear singing from half a mile away, and they were right. But mostly, she sang for Zachary, for the man who had seen her at her lowest point and offered her not pity but partnership, not charity but love. She sang for the life they had built together, for the family they had created, for every moment of happiness they shared. Sometimes, when they were old and gray and sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Zachary would ask her to sing the Irish ballad she had been singing that day in the boarding house yard, the one that had earned her the beating that changed her life. And Helena would sing it, her voice still clear and strong despite the years, and Zachary would take her hand and tell her he loved her. "I love you too," Helena would always reply. "Thank you for letting me sing." "Thank you for singing," Zachary would say. "Thank you for filling my life with music." They had 52 years together, Zachary and Helena, 52 years of love and laughter and hard work and music. When Zachary passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Helena holding his hand, the last thing he heard was her voice, singing him home. Helena lived another 5 years after that, surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved her dearly. She never stopped singing, never stopped filling the ranch house with music. And when it was her time to go, she went peacefully, with a smile on her face, humming the same lullaby her mother had sung to her so long ago. They buried her next to Zachary on a hill overlooking the ranch, the place they had both loved so much. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right, people swore they could still hear singing drifting across the valley, a beautiful voice full of joy and love and freedom, singing as loud as it wanted, now and forever.